Block 2, Mood Disorders, Psychotic Disorders, Somatic Symptoms and Eating Disorders.
4.0 Introduction. A discussion on mood disorders warrants a distinction to be made between the terms mood and emotion. Emotions are short-lived effect with usually a known cause. However, mood is longer-lasting emotions with no clear starting point. There are diverse kinds of emotions such as joy, pride, anger, guilt, sad, etc., whereas mood is classified as positive or negative. Mood disorders are serious changes in one's mood that may lead to distress and dysfunction. Mild mood disturbances are on the same continuum as mood disorders. A typical person experiencing fluctuations in mood in everyday life is different from a person with mood disorder only in terms of degree and not in the kind of emotions experienced. See Fig. 4.1. This is known as dimensional approach to mood disorders. People are able to bounce back from periods of sadness, euphoria to normalcy, unlike people with mood disorders. Typically, a person is able to feel normal after a short duration of time. They experience relatively greater degree of control over their mood than people with mood disorder. Mood disorders are classified as unipolar and bipolar disorder. Polar disorder was earlier known as manic depression. Figure 4.2 illustrates the types of mood disorders. Figure 4.1. Depression Elation Continuum Source, Stompostep1.com. 109. Mood disorders. Figure 4.2. Types of mood disorders. In this unit, we will look into mood disorders, their prevalence, causal factors and the treatment options. A serious aspect of mood disorder is suicide. The last section of this unit will focus on suicide and suicidal ideation. 4.1 Unipolar mood disorder. In unipolar mood disorders, a person experiences extraordinary sadness, depression. The types of unipolar mood disorder are major depression, clinical depression, and persistent mood disorder, dysthymia in DSM-IV. On the basis of duration and severity of depressive symptoms, unipolar mood disorder is classified into two types, namely, major depressive disorder, MDD, and dysthymia, persistent mood disorder. MDD is considered to be more severe but of shorter duration, whereas dysthymia is relatively less intense but lasts for a longer duration. Generally, the symptoms of depression can be classified as affective, cognitive, and physical.
Figure 4.2, Types of Mood Disorders. You can see the mood disorder is been basically classified into two different types. One is unipolar mood disorder and the second is bipolar mood disorder. Okay, under both these sections there are different types. Okay, so in unipolar you can see there are major depressive disorder, that is MDD, and Dysthymia. Okay, and in bipolar mood disorder there are two categories, bipolar 1 and 2 and Cyclothymic
Disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. 4.1.1 Major depressive mood disorder. Major depressive mood disorder, MDD, is one of the most easily recognized depressive disorders. It is defined by absence of manic or hypomanic episode before or during the disorder. According to DSM-5, a person experiencing MDD episode has depressed mood and or loss of interest or pleasure in life activities for at least 2 weeks. APA, 2000. MDD is an episodic disorder, that is, the symptoms are present for a period of time and then the person recovers. An untreated episode may stretch for 4 to 9 months. Generally, MDD consists of recurrent episodes of severe depression. Approximately 40 to 50% of people with initial episode will go on to experience another episode. Monroe and Harkness, 2011. The probability of recurrences increases with the number of prior episodes. Occurrences of isolated depressive episodes are rare. Thus, MDD is usually a chronic condition, consisting of recurrent depressive episode, with average number of episodes for an individual to be 4. DSM-5 lists the 9 symptoms for MDD episode. A person needs to be diagnosed with 5 out of 9 symptoms for diagnosis. While making diagnosis for depression, it is important to specify whether it is 1. Initial, first episode, 2. Recurrent episode, preceded by one or more previous episodes separated by at least 2 months with recover in between, or 3. Chronic. Although rare, in some cases major depression does not remit for over 2 years. The symptoms of MDD, illustrated in Figure 4.3, will be explained with the help of a case study, box 4.1. Figure 4.3. Symptoms of Major Depressive Disorder, DSM-5.
Figure 4.3. Symptoms of depression. There are 3 basic symptoms. One is affective, second is physical, third one is cognitive. Now, in affective symptoms, there are depressed mood and anhedonia. Okay. In physical, there are agitations or psychomotor retardation noticed by others. Second symptom is insomnia or hypersomnia, means either sleeps a lot or doesn't sleep at all. Then the third is significant unintentional weight loss or gain. The last one, symptom of a physical symptom of a symptoms of depression is fatigue or loss of energy. And the cognitive part of the symptoms of depression is feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt, diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness, recurrent thoughts of death.
Disorders Box 4.1. Case Study, Major Depressive Disorder. Rajesh, a 38-year-old unemployed man, had been feeling frustrated with his life over the past few months. Family reports that they noticed a number of changes in him after he lost a lot of money in a business venture. He began to spend a lot of time alone in his room. His mother would serve him food, but he would not eat it, instead would just stare at it. He used to enjoy going for morning walks and spend time with his children, but lately had stopped doing both. Initially, the family thought that he was upset over the failure of his business and would soon snap out of it. But over the period of next few days, he became more and more miserable and refused to talk to anyone. He would sleep till the afternoon and then spend most of his day on his bed. The family brought him to a psychiatrist after they found him one morning standing by the window crying uncontrollably and saying he just wanted to end everything. Depressed mood most of the day. Depression is not temporary sadness that lasts for a day or two or only part of the day. It is experience of significantly low mood for different times of the day for almost every day of the week. For instance, Rajesh was upset and was found crying uncontrollably for almost every day of the week. Anhedonia, loss of pleasure. MDD is not just a state of high negative affect but also low positive affect. In fact, anhedonia, or the loss of ability to experience pleasure, is considered to be far more characteristic of severity of MDD than reports of distress, sadness. A person suffering from MDD may lose interest in all those activities that they may have found enjoyable, such as going to school, work, being with friends and family, watching movies, eating good food, and hobbies. The individual may withdraw from people and activities as they no longer gets pleasure from them. Rajesh, box 4.1, enjoyed going for morning walks and spending time with his children, but had stopped doing both. Psychomotor retardation or agitation noticed by others. Evidence suggests that the most central indicator along with anhedonia is a somatic or vegetative state. A person with MDD exhibits behavioral and emotional shutdown. It is described as feeling slowness or having trouble in gathering energy to get up. Consequently, the person might want to just lie all day on the couch, surf internet, watch TV, or sleep a lot. For instance, Rajesh, box 4.1, found it hard to get up every morning and get out of his bed. People with very severe cases may be so slowed down that they may not move any muscles for hours, vegetative state. While some people experience psychomotor retardation, others may find it extremely difficult to sit still. They are likely to be in a state of psychomotor agitation, pacing about in a room, wringing one's hands, pulling off clothing and putting it back on, continuously fiddling with objects, keeping them down, and then fiddling again, and other similar actions. Fatigue or loss of energy. Apart from psychomotor retardation, physical symptoms of depression include fatigue and low energy as well as physical aches and pains. Such symptoms may make people believe that they may be suffering from some medical condition, even though there are no physical cause for the aches and pains. 112. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. A conversation between a therapist and client who is severely depressed. Therapist: can you tell me what you have planned for today? Client: long pause, well, not sure, might get up today. Therapist: okay, what next after getting up? Client: well, long pause. Therapist: yes, go on. Client: I don't know. I really just want to sleep. Carney and Trull, 2012, p.176. Insomnia or sleeping too much, hypersomnia. Although some people with MDD may experience exhaustion, aches and pains, they may find it difficulty in sleeping and may wake up frequently. They may wake up very early each morning, lying in bed until it is time to rise, early morning wakening. Conversely, some people like Rajesh may have a heavy feeling of fatigue and loss of energy that leads to oversleeping. Oversleeping may be seen as a way to escape the extreme sadness felt in awake states. Significant unintentional weight loss or gain. People with depression may fail to eat, complaining of finding food to taste bland or not feeling hungry, thereby losing significant amount of weight. Unlike Rajesh, who had stopped eating when offered food by his mother, other people with depression may often overeat to compensate for experience of intense sadness. Feelings of worthlessness and guilt about things beyond their control. Cognitive symptoms of depression include increased focus on one's flaws and deficits. The individual is likely to be highly self-critical. For instance, they may blame themselves for not being a good son, friend, or father, may call themselves good for nothing, useless, stupid, not good enough, loser, etc. A victim of abuse may continue to blame themselves for their condition. Diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness. Another cognitive symptom of depression is the inability to pay attention or make decisions. Patients of depression describe that paying attention can prove to be very exhausting, leading to problems at work and school. The inability to perform well at work and school further deteriorates feeling of worth and self-esteem. Recurrent thoughts of death. Low positive affect, high negative affect, problems with sleeping, eating, loss of energy, and feelings of worthlessness and lack of concentration may make an individual feel utterly dejected and hopeless. There is a high risk for suicidal ideation and suicide attempts in such individuals. Suicidal ideation refers to morbid thoughts and fantasies about dying, funerals, self-destructive behaviors, such as cutting and burning. 113. Mood disorders. Box 4.2. DSM-5 criteria for major depressive disorder. APA, 2013, A. The individual must be experiencing 5 or more symptoms during the same 2-week period, and at least one of the symptoms should be either 1. Depressed mood, or 2. Loss of interest or pleasure. 1. Depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. 2. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all, or almost all, activities. Most of the day, nearly every day. 3. Significant weight loss when not dieting, or weight gain or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. 4. A slowing down of thought and a reduction of physical movement. Observable by others, not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. 5. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. 6. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. 7. Diminished ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness, nearly every day. 8. Recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. B. At least one of the symptoms is anhedonia or low mood. C. The symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. D. The episode is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition. E. There has never been a manic episode. Check your progress. 1.1. Differentiate the concept of mood from emotions. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 2. Define mood disorders. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 3. How are unipolar mood disorders different from bipolar mood disorders? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 114. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. 4. What is anhedonia? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 4.1.2 Dysthymia, persistent depressive disorder. Dysthymia or persistent depressive disorder as DSM-5 calls it, shares many features with major depressive disorder, but is different in two regards. First, dysthymia has fewer and less intense symptoms, and second, depression lasts for a long period. Depressed mood in dysthymia may last for most of the day, but the depression is of mild to moderate intensity. The central feature of dysthymia is its chronicity. DSM-5 specifies chronic feeling of depression for at least 2 years. On an average, people with dysthymia have had mild-moderate symptoms for 5 years, but in some cases, it may last for 20 years or more. It includes intense feeling of being sad most of every day with relief from symptoms never longer than 2 months at a time. Box 4.3. Case Study, Persistent Depressive Disorder, Dysthymia. Mahir, as an 18-year-old college student, went to college counselor because he felt that he was suffering from depression. Even though he was performing well in class, he complained of feeling a constant sense of tiredness. However, along with feeling tiredness, he also felt blue, down and hopeless since a very long time. He described himself as being a loner and did not have any friends since school. He felt nobody wanted to be his friend because he was an uninteresting and boring person. He shared that his parents would constantly fight. His mother wanted to separate from her abusive husband but was unable to do so because she was concerned about Mahir's future. It soon became clear that he never really felt loved by his parents. Mahir admitted experiencing a vague sense of guilt for his parents' conflicted relationship. Lives of my parents would have been better if I was never been born. Box 4.4. DSM-5 Criteria for Dysthymia, Persistent Depressive Disorder, APA, 2013. A. Depressed mood for most of the day, for more days than not, as indicated by either subjective account or observation by others, for at least 2 years. B. Presence, while depressed, of 2 or more of the following. 1. Poor appetite or overeating. 2. Insomnia or hypersomnia. 3. Low energy or fatigue. 4. Low self-esteem. 5. Poor concentration or difficulty making decisions. 6. Feelings of hopelessness. 115. Mood disorders see during the 2-year period, 1 year for children or adolescents, of the disturbance. The individual has never been without the symptoms in criteria A and B for more than 2 months at a time. D. Criteria for a major depressive disorder may be continuously present for 2 years. E. There has never been a manic episode or a hypomanic episode, and criteria have never been met for cyclothymic disorder. F. The disturbance is not better explained by a persistent schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, delusional disorder, or other specified or unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorder. G. The symptoms are not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance, example, a drug of abuse, a medication, or another medical condition, example, hypothyroidism. H. The symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Double depression. Individuals with double depression meet the criteria for both major depressive disorder and persistent depressive disorder. In a typical case, at an early age, mild-moderate intensity of depressive symptoms develop first. The person in this case likely to be relatively more functional, and then 1 or more MDD episodes occur only to revert to dysthymia once the MDD has run its course. Double depression is difficult to ascertain unless a professional who has been seeing the client with dysthymia since some time spots sudden or gradual worsening of the client's symptoms. It is important for professionals to recognize double depression, as it is associated with poorer prognosis that has high rates of relapse and recurrence. Recurrence. Figure 4.4. Pictorial representation of depression source. https://slideplayer.com/slide/5181380/.
In normal mood fluctuations, you will find like ups and down always. In dysthymia, what you will find is that it will go down, and more than that, in major depression it will completely go down, and double depression is like go down and again go down. It's a double depression. Let's continue.
4.1.3 Additional defining criteria for depressive disorders, specifiers. Some individuals who meet the basic criteria for diagnosis of major depression may also meet additional patterns of symptoms called specifiers. Specifiers influence the course of the disorder and effective treatment. 106. Figure 4.5. Specifiers of major depressive disorder. Psychotic features. In MDD with psychotic features, the person in midst of a depressive episode may experience loss of contact with reality and delusions or hallucinations. Mood-congruent hallucinations, delusions have negative tone, themes of personal inadequacy, guilt, deserved punishment, death, and disease. Example: one's internal organs have totally deteriorated. In rare condition, it may be severe and may mark the beginning of schizophrenia. It could be possible that the patient may have had symptoms of schizophrenia to begin with. The clinician in this case may consider possible diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. MDD with psychotic feature is difficult to treat, responds poorly to treatment, is associated with greater impairments with fewer weeks of minimal symptoms. Anxious distress features. The individual exhibits severity of anxious symptoms, which may meet criteria for anxiety disorders, comorbidity, or do not meet full criteria for anxiety disorders, subthreshold. Presence of anxiety indicates a more severe condition, suicidal ideation and completed suicides more likely, and poorer outcome of treatment. Mixed features. The person is predominantly experiencing depressive episodes but also experiences several, at least 3, symptoms of mania. Many researchers find bipolar to be a misleading label. This is because clinicians have noted occurrences of mixed episodes, that is, a person with bipolar disorder may not always alternate between the opposite ends of the depression-elation continuum. Instead, in a mixed episode, a patient may become anxious or depressed about experienced symptoms of mania as being out of control, reckless, dangerous, and racing thoughts. Mixed episodes may be more common than previously thought. In one study, it was found that about 30% of the patients hospitalized for acute mania had mixed episodes, Hantouche and others, 2006. Psychotic features. Anxious distress. Mixed features. Melancholic features. Atypical features. Catatonic features. Postpartum onset. Seasonal pattern. SPEC. IFIE. RS. 117. Mood disorders. Melancholic features. This specifier only applies in case of major depressive disorder, separately or in double depression. The person with MDD with melancholic features has lost interest in almost all activities or desired events, anhedonia. They experience more severe physical symptoms like significant psychomotor retardation, early morning awakenings, weight loss, and loss of libido. Atypical features. This specifier applies to both MDD and dysthymia. It is used for people who display unusual depressive symptoms. Relative to most people with depression, those with atypical features consistently oversleep, overeat during their depressive episode and thus gain weight. The person's mood may brighten in response to positive events. Postpartum onset specifier. The onset of major depressive episode occurs during the postpartum period, 4 weeks immediately after childbirth. For the woman and her family, it may be difficult to understand why they are depressed because they are expected to be joyous at the arrival of their baby. Seasonal pattern feature. At least 2 or more episodes in past 2 years that have occurred at the same time, usually in winter, and full remission at the same time, usually spring. There are no other non-seasonal episodes in 2-year period. MDD with this specifier is called Seasonal Affective Disorder, SAD. SAD is related to secretions of melatonin hormone and circadian rhythm. Catatonic feature. MDD with catatonic feature is rare. Catatonia is serious absence of movement in which patient's arms or legs remain in any position in which they are placed, waxy flexibility. Catatonia was earlier associated with schizophrenia. Recent studies suggest it is more common in depression than schizophrenia. Check your progress 2.1. How is persistent depressive disorder different from major depressive disorder? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 2. What is double depression? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 3. Define seasonal affective disorder. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 118. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. 4.2 Bipolar mood disorder. People with bipolar mood disorder alternate between depressive and manic episodes on the depression-elation continuum. See Figure 4.1. Bipolar disorders are classified as bipolar I, bipolar II, and cyclothymic disorder. It is rare for mania to occur by itself in the absence of a manic episodes. Bipolar disorders were previously known as manic depressive illness. Presence of mania distinguishes bipolar from unipolar disorders. A person diagnosed with bipolar disorder experiences depressive episodes that alternate with manic episodes. Mania can be distinguished into 2 types depending on severity: hypomania and full-blown mania. Full-blown mania leads to significant occupational and social functioning. Hospitalization is often necessary in case of full-blown mania. Manic symptoms in hypomania are similar, but the severity is lesser. Impairment caused by hypomania is to a lesser degree than for full-blown mania, and hospitalization is not required. 4.2.1 Manic episode. Mania is an emotional state where intense elation, unusual irritability, or heightened goal-directed activity or energy exists for at least 1 week. In case of hypomania, the symptoms last for 4 days in a row and are not severe enough to require hospitalization. Hypomania may be experienced as pleasurable as it leads to increased energy and creativity. However, it may have undesirable consequences like suicidal tendencies when the predominant mood is irritable instead of euphoric. Psychotic features are also likely to be absent in hypomania. According to DSM-5, 3 or more of the following symptoms must be present to a significant degree for the diagnosis of a manic episode. Grandiosity refers to inflated self-esteem or the feeling of being able to do something unlikely or impossible. A person may feel they are capable of making great inventions, be in the same league as famous personalities, or be capable of great creativity. People feel on top of the world, with the ability to do great many things. Decreased need for sleep. An individual experiencing a manic episode tends to feel rested with very little sleep. They may experience insomnia and may need very little food. More talkative than usual or pressure to keep talking. In a manic episode, the person may start talking excessively. They experience a heightened need to talk to others. Their speech is paced. Sometimes others may find it difficult to understand them. Excessive speech is related to racing thoughts in manic episode. A conversation between a therapist and client who has mania. Therapist: can you tell me what have you planned for today? Client: oh yeah. Lots of things, lots of things, lots of things. Therapist: okay, can you? Client: interrupting: gonna drive, gonna fly, gonna bus, gonna ride. Therapist: speaking quickly to get a word in. Where do you want to go? Client: anywhere, anytime, Rome, Greece, wherever I go, I can go. Carney and Troll 2012, page 179 to 180. 119. Mood disorders. Flight of ideas. Flight of ideas refers to the subjective experience that one's thoughts are racing. The person with mania speaks rapidly, Sometimes words may slur, because their mind is generating so many thoughts that it becomes difficult to express all of them. Distractibility. The attention of a person with mania is easily drawn to unimportant or irrelevant external stimuli. This may make people perform poorly at school or work, in spite of feeling heightened sense of productivity and creativity. Increase in goal-directed activity, psychomotor agitation. People with manic show increased goal-directed activity either socially, at work or school, or sexually. They display great enthusiasm for projects and would pour themselves into work. It may seem to others that a person with mania accomplishes a lot, but a closer look shows that the work is riddled with mistake. Excessive involvement in pleasurable activities that have a high potential for painful consequences. In a manic episode, an individual may get involved in pleasurable activities that may become self-destructive. For instance, a person may empty their bank balance, go on an unprotected sexual spree with multiple partners, steal money, enter into foolish business investments, commit fraud, drive car at extremely high speed, etc. Box 4.5. DSM-5 Criteria for Manic Episode, APA, 2013, a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive or irritable mood and abnormally and persistently increased goal-directed activity or energy, lasting at least 1 week and present most of the day nearly every day, or any duration if hospitalization is required. B. During the period of mood disturbances or increased activity, 3 or more of the following symptoms must be present to a significant degree and represent a noticeable change from usual behavior. 1. Inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. 2. Decreased need for sleep, example, one feels rested after only 3 hours of sleep. 3. More talkative than usual or pressure to keep talking. 4. Flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing. 5. Attention is easily drawn to unimportant or irrelevant items. 6. Increase in goal-directed activity, either socially, at work or school, or sexually, or psychomotor agitation. Excessive involvement in pleasurable activities that have a high potential for painful consequences, example, engaging in unrestrained buying sprees, sexual indiscretions, or foolish business investments. Box 4.6. Case study. Manic episode. Ankit is 40-year-old man brought to the emergency department with cuts to his arms, chest and face, which he received as a result of a fight on the street. In the hospital, Ankit finds it extremely difficult to stay in bed and is constantly wandering around the ward into other rooms. When he is in bed, Ankit is constantly ringing the buzzer. He is frequently found talking to 120. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. Other patients, staff and visitors about his wonderful new invention. His family was called, who informed the doctors that Ankit has a history of bipolar disorder. Ankit's wife informed that he had been finding it difficult to sleep in the past few days. He had stopped taking his medicines for bipolar disorder. He seemed to be in a good mood and would stay up the entire night working on his laptop. Before leaving the house that morning, Ankit told his wife that he was going to quit his job because he was too good for the job and he was wasting his talent at the job. He told his wife that he was bursting with energy and that he wanted to buy laptops from the market for his new invention. When his wife tried to stop him, he got irritable and aggressive and left the house after pushing her away. What mania feels like. My pulse feels like it is racing, but when measured it comes out to just about 100 beats per minute, just a little above average. I feel like I can hear more than I usually can. There's a buzz in that one alarm clock that is constant and a high thrum. I know I'm not hallucinating it. I've tried plugging my ears and the buzz disappears. When I hold the clock to my ear, it's noticeably louder. My friends sound like they're talking slowly, as though they think I can't understand them. In reality, we've been speaking for nearly hours. They comment on how animated and passionate I am. It's a topic I don't care about. I know I can't afford what I just bought, but it gives me so much pleasure I couldn't stand not owning it for one more minute. I finished 3 projects that I've been working on for literal months. Each had dedicated days worth of work left before they'd be passable. I did it in one night. I'm praised at their quality, even though I think it's all bad. I check the time. I have an hour to make a 10-minute walk. I'm late anyway, even though I didn't make any diversions. suddenly it's 3 days later. I've more than survived, I've thrived through them. I don't remember them. People talk about what happened for the next few weeks. They start to expect me to always be like that. I let them down. A lot. I laugh but no one told a joke. Nothing funny happened. The other people around me all look at me with questions in their eyes. I can almost hear them out loud. I interrupted the discussion of the impact of a friend's suicide. I don't feel like I can fly, but I feel like falling won't hurt. It doesn't, landing does. I try it again, anyways. I don't know what to say. But apparently, I've said it already. I wish I could remember what it was. My boyfriend is calling my name. He has been for a while. I don't know how long. He says he's worried about me. I was looking off into space and not responding to him. He says it's been an hour. I don't remember sitting down. It's like dating a different person. He says, I love this new you. You're so strong and confident. Your writing is so beautiful. It's hard to describe what a manic episode is like without using vignettes like this for me. A manic episode isn't a single experience. It's a shattered collection of memory shards that I've managed to collect and piece together from others recounting as well as my own. I know they're not in order, but it feels better this way. Source: https://www.quora.com/what-does-a-manic-episode-feel-like. 4.2.2 Types of bipolar disorder. DSM-5 classifies bipolar disorder into 3 types, namely, bipolar I, bipolar II, and cyclothymic disorder. People with bipolar I disorder experience episodes of 121. Mood disorders, full-blown mania, and periods of major depressive disorder. Even if the individual does not meet the threshold for a major depressive episode, the diagnosis of bipolar I disorder is still given. A mixed episode characterized by symptoms of both full-blown manic and major depressive episodes for at least 1 week also receives the diagnosis of bipolar I disorder, whether the symptoms are intermixed or alternate rapidly every few days. Bipolar II disorder is characterized by episodes of hypomania and depressed mood that meets the criteria for major depressive disorder. In bipolar II disorder, the person does not experience full-blown mania or mixed episode. If a person only shows manic symptoms, then it is assumed that the person will experience a depressive episode also, or may have experiences symptoms of mild depression that went unrecognized. Finally, cyclothymic disorder is defined as a less serious version of full-blown bipolar disorder because it lacks certain extreme symptoms and psychotic features such as delusions and the marked impairment caused by full-blown manic or major depressive episodes. The depressed mood in cyclothymic disorder is similar to the depressed mood in dysthymia, such as low energy, feelings of inadequacy, social withdrawal, and a negative, brooding attitude. The person's mood is dejected. They experience distinct loss of interest or pleasure in customary activities and pastimes. Similarly, the manic mood in cyclothymia is similar to symptoms of hypomania. The person displays surge in creativity, bursts of energy, increased productivity, and physical, mental energy. The duration of cyclothymia is at least a period of 2 years, during which numerous periods of hypomanic and depressive symptoms are experienced that cause clinically significant impairment, although not as severe as bipolar I and II disorder. In between, there may be significant period of normal mood in which the person may function in relatively adapted manner. Features can be as high-strung, explosive, moody, or even hyperactive. Cyclothymia is a chronic and lifelong condition. Some of them go on to develop full-blown bipolar disorder later in life. 4.2.3 Additional specifiers for bipolar disorder. Along with the diagnosis for bipolar disorder, clinicians make note of specifiers to make a more specific diagnosis. Bipolar disorder has the same specifiers as unipolar disorder, that is mixed feature, anxious distress feature, psychotic feature, melancholic feature, postpartum feature, seasonal pattern, catatonic and atypical features. In addition, there is another feature called rapid cycling. Individual given this specifier quickly move in and out of depressive or manic episodes, that is at least 4 manic depressive episodes in a year. Some people with bipolar can switch to a rapid cycling pattern, but most return to their normal bipolar pattern in time. This pattern is likely to have an earlier age of onset and make more suicide attempts. Rapid cycling is usually temporary and disappears within a period of 2 years. Check your progress. 3.1. Differentiate between mania and hypomania. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 122. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. 2. What is rapid cycling and bipolar disorder? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 4.3 Statistics studies indicate the incidence rate of mood disorders is on the rise. Almost 20% of adults and 50% of youth report recent symptoms of depression. Kessler, 2002. According to World Health Organization, 2012, approximately 9% of people in India have reported having an extended period of depression within their lifetime. Relative to unipolar mood disorder, bipolar disorder is less common with lifetime prevalence rate to be about 3.9%. Average age of onset is somewhat younger for bipolar disorders than unipolar disorders. For bipolar I disorder is 18 years and for bipolar II is between 19 to 22 years, although cases of both can begin in childhood. It is considered rare for someone to develop bipolar after the age of 40 years. Gender differences in unipolar disorder is seen with higher number of women, 2 to 1, receiving diagnosis of depression. However, gender differences are not present for bipolar disorder. With respect to the age of onset, although severe depression and dysthymia usually begin in late adolescence or early adulthoods, mid-20s, but they can occur at any age. It is not uncommon for many adults to have depression for several years before seeking treatment. Diagnosis is most common between the ages of 30 to 59 years. Studies have found that less than half of the people with major mood disorders sought treatment. Mood disorders are highly comorbid with anxiety, personality disorders and substance abuse disorder. 4.4 Causal factors of unipolar mood disorder. A number of different causal factors have been studied in context of the etiology of unipolar mood disorder, including biological, psychological, and sociocultural factors. Researchers believe that interaction between these causal factors that is the biopsychosocial model. 4.4.1 Biological factors. There are many different approaches to understand the biological factors underlying the development of unipolar mood disorders. Researchers have found the possible role of genetics, neurochemistry, hormones, neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, sleep and circadian rhythms. Genetics. Family studies report that first-degree relatives of a person has depression have an increased risk, about 2 to 3 times higher, to develop depression than relatives of control group. Also, factors such as severity, recurrence of major depressive episodes and earlier age of onset are associated with higher rates of depression in relatives. Twin studies have also found higher concordance rate for depression in identical twins relative. 123. Mood disorders with non-identical twins. Moreover, concordance rates are found to be higher for females than males. Adoption studies also provide support for genetic basis of unipolar mood disorders. Chances of unipolar depression were higher in biological relatives of adopted children than in biological relatives of control adopted children. The serotonin transporter gene, which is involved in transmission and reuptake of the neurotransmitter serotonin, has been identified. Researchers in the field believe that there is no one faulty gene underlying depression. In fact, there are several patterns of genes. Genetic factors have been found to underlie the temperament of neuroticism that predisposes an individual to both anxiety and depression. Taken together, family, twin, and adoption studies make a strong case for moderate genetic contribution to the causal pattern of depression, but not as large a genetic contribution as for bipolar disorder. Genetic factors may provide a diathesis for development of depression. Faulty genes may produce neurochemical, neuroanatomical, neurophysiological and hormonal changes in an individual. Neurotransmitters. Electroconvulsive therapy and antidepressant medicines found to be effective in case of unipolar depression suggest neurotransmitter activities to play a role in depression. Such findings have led to the development of neurochemical theories of etiology of depression. The monoamine hypothesis of depression presented in 1960s to 70s focused on 3 neurotransmitters of the monoamine class, namely norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. According to the monoamine hypothesis, depression is a result of absolute or relative depletion of the one or all of these neurotransmitters at important receptor sites in the brain. Depletion is hypothesized to be because of either 1. Reduced production, 2. Increased degradation of the neurotransmitters at the synapse, or 3. Altered functioning of the postsynaptic receptors. Follow-up studies found some contrary evidence to the monoamine hypothesis. First, some studies have found that there may actually be an increase in norepinephrine, a class of monoamine neurotransmitters. Second, only a minority of patients with depression, that is those with more severe symptoms and suicidal ideas, had reduced serotonin activity. Third, medicines immediately increase the availability of neurotransmitters, but they take about 2 to 4 weeks to show effect. Finally, it was found that people with depression did not have disturbance in the absolute level of neurotransmitters. By 1980s, it was clear that a straightforward mechanism is not possible. Newer studies suggest that depression may be related to the sensitivity of postsynaptic receptors that has reduced sensitivity for dopamine and serotonin levels. Serotonin in particular has been implicated in unipolar depression. People who are vulnerable to depression may have less sensitive serotonin receptors. Apart from serotonin, reduced sensitivity to dopamine is related to anhedonia, lack of motivation and energy. Most recent studies have focused on the interaction of neurotransmitters and hormones, brain activity, and biological rhythms. Endocrine system, hormones. In search for identifying the causal factors underlying depression, attention has moved from a focus on neurotransmitters to the endocrine system, in particular the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis. According to the stress hypothesis, people with depression have dysfunction in the HPA axis, leading to the increased blood plasma levels of cortisol, stress hormone. Thus, cortisol levels are poorly regulated in people with depression. Elevated stress hormone, cortisol, levels are consistent with the relationship between depression and 124. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. Severe stress. High cortisol levels are harmful to neurons. Neurons in hippocampus are affected, leading to problems with memory impairments and problems with abstract thinking. Hippocampus also keeps regulating cortisol. Some researchers suggest that perhaps low hippocampal neuronal volume precedes and contributes to onset of depression. The findings are supporting of evidence that has found that treatments for unipolar depression like electroconvulsive therapy and exercise promotes neurogenesis in hippocampus. Another hormonal system, the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid (HPT) axis, has been linked to depression. About 40 to 60% of depressed patients show dysregulation of the axis. Keller, Edel, 2017. Figure 4.6. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis source. https://commons.wikimedia.org/w/index.php. Currid equals 233633130. Neuroanatomy and neurophysiology. Neurofunctional studies have found many regions of the brain are functioning atypically. Overactivity has been reported in amygdala that is related to oversensitivity to emotionally relevant stimuli. Those systems involved in weighing rewards and costs, making decisions, and systematically planning and pursuing goals in the face of emotions appear less active. That is, face of emotional stimuli. Example: experience of failure. A person with depression responds with increased emotion but has decreased ability to plan, to deal with the stimuli. Apart from the brain systems involved in emotion, sensitivity of the brain structures part of the reward system in the brain is also altered. Researchers are trying to understand whether structural and functional changes in brain in depression are cause or effect of unipolar depression. Figure 4.7. Cortisol level in people with depression and control group source. https://www.semantic-scholar.org/paper/serum-cortisol-levels-in-depression patients Bakit 8C0D8D6A732523 B44D 1550 FB9A3570F2063275 125. Mood Disorders Table 4.1. Summary of neurofunctional studies in unipolar depression. Brain structure. Functional function. Activation status. Amygdala elevated response to threatening stimuli. Hippocampus diminished retrieval of memories related to the cues. Prefrontal cortex diminished focus and make plans based on emotionally relevant cues. Anterior cingulate diminished, involved in complex cognitive cortex functions like decision-making. Empathy, impulse control. Basal ganglia diminished, part of the reward system of the brain. This area leads to experience of pleasure. Sleep and circadian rhythms. The common sleep problems in depressed outpatients show a variety of patterns like early morning awakenings, periodic awakening during night, and difficulty falling asleep. Studies have found that people with depression enter REM sleep more quickly, usually after an hour, when typical people take about 1.5 hours, and have lower than normal amount of deep sleep than normal. Sleep alternations precede the onset of depression and persist following recovery, which suggests that they may be vulnerability markers for certain forms of depression. Apart from sleep, disruption in circadian rhythms, example secretion of hormones like thyroid-stimulating hormones, TSH, cortisol, or internal sleep-wake cycle has also been reported in people with early morning awakening or those with depression with the seasonal feature, seasonal affective disorder, SAD. Seasonal changes in the production of melatonin, hormone secreted by pineal gland, have been related to SAD. Exposure to light suppresses melatonin production and is produced only at night. Its production tends to increase in the winter, when there is less sunlight. Studies have shown that melatonin secretions increase in winter, but only in patients with SAD and not in healthy controls. Thus, sensitivity to increase in melatonin is a vulnerability marker to development of unipolar depression. Figure 4.8. Circadian rhythms in human source. https://www.fullspectrumsolutions.com/pages/circadian rhythm. 126. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. 4.4.2 Psychosocial factors. Evidence for psychosocial risk factors is as strong as biological risk factors. According to the diathesis stress model, neurobiological factors may be the diatheses that interact with the psychosocial stressors leading to development of unipolar depression. Although many people experience psychosocial stressors, not everyone develops depression. Also, many experience psychosocial stressors, but not all become depressed. This is only true for those with biological vulnerability. Psychosocial factors include psychological diathesis, stressful life events, and interpersonal factors. Stressful life events. Many studies have shown that severely stressful life events such as loss of loved one, serious threats to important relationships, or to one's occupation, severe economic or health problems often serve as a precipitating factor, trigger, for unipolar depression. However, the relationship between stressful events and depression is not a simple one. Studies have found that the nature of stressful event is a moderating factor. For instance, events that involve experience of loss, humiliation, and social rejection are likely to trigger depression. Additionally, the perceived severity of the event is an important factor too. Recent and severe stressful life event plays a role in people with first episode of depression, whereas minor and less severe events may be enough to trigger subsequent episodes. Finally, chronic stressors such as poverty, social discrimination, domestic abuse, marital discord, chronic illnesses in family members or oneself lead to increased risk of onset and maintenance of depression. While the relationship between stressful events and depression is well established, researchers are trying to understand whether stressful events cause depression, or does vulnerability to depression cause one to be sensitive to stressful events. Stressors can be understood in terms of independent life events such as loss of job in recession, earthquake, loss of someone close, etc., or dependent life events, that is, those related to one's interpersonal skills, problem solving and coping skills, such as constant reassurance seeking, poor management of time or self-medication, use of alcohol or drugs to feel relaxed, calm, and sleep. Research suggests that dependent life events play a stronger role in the onset of major depression than do independent life events. Psychological diathesis. An individual high on the personality trait of neuroticism and/or pessimistic attributional style is considered to be vulnerable to unipolar depression. Individuals with neuroticism tend to be sensitive to a broad range of negative moods including sadness, guilt, anxiety, hostility, etc. Those high on neuroticism generally have been found to have poorer prognosis. Beck, 1967, has found that pessimistic attributional style or the tendency to interpret everyday events in negative way also makes one prone to depression. Pessimistic attributional style is finding internal, stable, and global attributions to negative events. Such as, it's all my fault, it happens all the time, it happens with everything. Psychological cognitive diathesis has been discussed later in the unit under the heading of Cognitive Theory of Depression. Interpersonal factors, early childhood adversity, lack of social support, marital and familial discord, and parental depression have been identified as possible triggers for the development of depression in someone with biological and psychological diatheses for development of depression. Early 127. Mood disorders. Childhood adversities like losing a parent early in life, parental depression, family turmoil, physical or sexual abuse, intrusive, harsh, neglectful and coercive parenting can make an individual vulnerable to development. Supportive and healthy relationships can play a supportive role in people with vulnerability to develop depression. Conversely, socially isolated individuals or those with smaller and less supportive social networks tend to become vulnerable to becoming depressed. Lack of social support can form a reciprocal relationship with depression, since behavior of people with depression may produce sympathy in short term but in long term may lead to neglect, rejection by others. Similarly, two-way relationship has also been found for marital and familial discord. Domestic discord can lead to depression and depression can in turn lead to heightened domestic discord. Check your progress. 5.1. What is the monoamine hypothesis of depression? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 2. What is circadian rhythm? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 3. What is pessimistic attributional style? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 4. Is there an association between stress and depression? Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe our channel. 4.4.3 Theoretical perspectives on unipolar depression. The different theoretical perspectives in depression provide explanation for unipolar depression. The cognitive behavioral theories of unipolar depression have proven to be effective in its treatment, whereas psychodynamic explanations of depression explains it as a result of excessive and irrational grief, reaction to loss, real, imagined, or symbolic, have failed to find support. Beck's cognitive theory. One of the most prominent theories of depression was given by Aaron Beck, who proposed that the cognitive symptoms of depression, example, I'm hopeless, total failure, precede and cause the affective symptoms of depression, example, upset and miserable. Beck proposed that 128. Mood disorders, psychotic disorders, somatic symptoms and eating disorders. Dysfunctional, depressogenic beliefs that are rigid, extreme and counterproductive are formed during early childhood through interactions with parents and significant others. Example, I must be perfect in everything, I'm unworthy of being loved. These beliefs may lie dormant and form a cognitive diathesis to develop depression in life later on. These beliefs are never challenged and become self-fulfilling. For instance, a person who has a core belief that they are unworthy of being loved may reject loving advances of others and may withdraw from others, making others reject them in turn. Under stressful situation in life called critical incidents, such as those involving humiliation, loss, and social rejection, these dormant beliefs may become dominant and may generate automatic negative thoughts. These thoughts are below the surface level of awareness and are negative and pessimistic predictions about oneself. I'm a loser. Others, nobody loves me, and future, it's all hopeless, nobody will ever love me. Beck labeled this as cognitive triad. Cognitive distortion is maintained by cognitive distortions that are errors in one's thinking and leads to biased processing of information. Some examples of cognitive errors are, all or none thinking, I'm either best at something or I'm nothing, overgeneralization, I failed in my job, I'm an absolute loser, arbitrary reference, nothing good can ever happen to me and I can never get well, and personalization, it's all my fault. Automatic negative thoughts can cause depressed mood, and depressed mood in turn can make negative thoughts salient. This has been labeled as the vicious cycle of depression. Figure 4.9. Beck's Cognitive Theory of Depression Source, Abnormal Psychology, 2020. Butcher, Hooley, and Manic.
You will notice that depression early experience से start होके formation dysfunction belief में बन के critical incident से और briefly activate बन के negative automatic thoughts बन के बाद में ये cycle continue हो जाता है. So motivational, affective, cognitive और somatic symptoms दिखाने लग जाते हैं.
Helplessness Theory. Martin Seligman's performed an experiment on dogs. He found that if dogs are given occasional shocks, then they can function reasonably well as long as they can cope by doing something to avoid them, such as jump over low barrier to a safe place, controllable condition. But if they are in conditions where nothing they can do would help them escape the shock, that is a helpless situation, uncontrollable condition, then the dogs would begin to show symptoms of depression. He proposed that helplessness can make people passive and unmotivated to respond in the future even when situations become controllable, that is allowing the dog to escape. Seligman, 1975, theorized that depression results from learning that one's physical, social environment is beyond one's personal control. Abramson and colleagues, 1978, worked on a reformulating Seligman's helplessness theory and proposed that human beings, unlike animals, make attributions. In helpless conditions, human beings are likely to make pessimistic attributions, which are central to depression. Thus, people who have pessimistic attributional style have a vulnerability, diathesis, for depression when faced with uncontrollable situation in life. Figure 4.11. Pessimistic attributions. Self. Others' future. Negative thoughts. Global. It's not just this time, I just cannot get anything right. Stable. I can never get anything right. Internal. I'm stupid. Pessimistic attributions. 100.
Figure 4.12, hopelessness expectancy is shown here. What you can see is one had no control over what was going to happen. ये helpless और hopelessness में बदल जाता है. Absolute certainty that a bad outcome was going to happen is also enters into hopelessness expectancy. Highly desired good outcome was not going to happen. This also will lead to hopelessness and hopelessness expectancy.